Hey everyone, today is March 18th, 2020, and today's lab that we're going to be doing at home is blood typing. If you look, I have my YouTube channel up there, Tigers Holt 1, and my TikTok. Sometimes I make TikToks when I am bored, which I kind of am during this quarantine. And I also want to make sure that I give credit to the Ward's Simulated Blood Lab Whodunit Kit, because if you are a teacher and you want to do this lab with your students, you want to make sure that you use the Ward Simulated Blood Lab so that you can get all the materials that I have in front of me today. So we're going to start out with a quick lesson about blood types. So looking at blood types, you guys should have done your blood typing game online, although I know the district, some of you are having trouble with it being blocked. So if you weren't able to do the blood type, what you should have done on the blood typing game, which is at nobelprize.org, and it is called the blood typing game, if you are not able to do that, then we're going to go over everything so that you know what you should be looking for. So when we have a blood typing activity, when we're talking about blood types, we're talking specifically about red blood cells. So we want to make sure that we focus on our red blood cells. White blood cells we use for the DNA portion of the forensics, but red blood cells, the proteins on the outside, are what's important to us when we're trying to do a blood type. So you have type A, which I'm going to represent with these little triangles. You have type B, which I'm going to represent with these little blue bubbles. And then you have the Rh factor, which I'm going to represent with these little purple things that look like they are field goals. So know that you can have type A, type B, type AB, type O, and then Rh factor, which is this little purple stuff that's the protein on the outside. That's going to tell you whether or not the blood is positive or negative. So to give examples, type A blood over here would have the triangles, which means they have the A protein on the outside, and they have the Rh factor on the outside. So that gives you A positive. B blood, we would have the B proteins on the outside, and then we're going to have the we're going to have the Rh factor markings on the outside as well, on the outside of the red blood cell. That's going to give us type B positive. For AB, whenever we have AB, we have both triangles and bubbles. So this is type AB, and if it's positive, we will also have Rh factor. So we have type AB positive for this. Then type O doesn't have A or B proteins on the outside, but what it does have is it has the Rh factor, so that makes it O positive. O positive is your most common blood type amongst the public. Now, if we're talking about A negative, we're just talking about having the triangles on the outside, just like this picture. So A negative, you have no Rh factor. B negative, you have no Rh factor. AB negative, you have the A's and you have the B's, but no Rh factor. And then an O negative, I know I messed up right here. It's a little weird doing this on paper instead of a whiteboard. The O negative is going to be the blood that has nothing on the outside. Know that O negative blood is a universal donor. So when we talk about what we're going to do with this, we talk about it being something that we want to make sure that we have the nothing on the outside, because then it can help all of the other ones. If we don't know somebody's blood type, we can use O negative without having a problem. Also know that just because coronavirus is out there does not mean that blood banks are not in need of blood. Please make sure that you look at the American Red Cross if any of you would have to leave quarantine in your homes and go out. The American Red Cross is still looking for blood donors and still needs blood in this time of crisis. So I'm going to put pause on this for a minute, and then I'm going to come back and show you the lab setups, and we're going to do the lab setups together. Okay guys, so here's the lab. If you look, I've got my lab setups all complete and ready to go. We're going to talk about what we're going to do here. So first of all, I want to show you guys that I have my stirrers in my clean cup. I have the trash like we always do. We always keep a trash cup around so we can throw out our stuff so we don't cross-contaminate. I also have down here suspect 1, suspect 2, suspect 3, suspect 4, crime scene, and victim's blood. This blood kit, again, is obtained by Ward Science. So Ward Science would be the place you would want to go. Teachers, if you want to get this lab and work with it with your kids. I also have over here some serums. So I have anti-A, anti-B, and anti-RH, and those are lined up as well. Again, if you watch the tutorial online, you can see how they use the anti-serums and how they have an illustration of how they move and how they create the clumps that we're going to talk about. So as you guys had to answer before, the clumps that we're looking for is what we're calling agglutination or clumping. So what I would have you guys do if we were in the real lab in our classroom today is I would have you guys go ahead and put out the table and put out your trays like this. So I'd have suspect 1, suspect 2, suspect 3, and suspect 4. Then down here, I have my crime scene and my victim. And again, if we were using the traditional template that comes with this lab, this would be the way that it was set out. I know for today, I've modified it for a little bit so that you guys can do this and not have to color in the stuff because that was going to be really hard to do on your documents. So to run each test, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the simulated blood and I am going to start with, as you guys can see, suspect 1. I'm going to take then and place a few drops of suspect 1 into the A. If you guys can see, it says A. Then I'm going to put a few drops into B. Then I'm going to put a few drops into RH. Okay? Once I'm done, I close the lid on that, and then I'm going to put it back into the thing. I would go through and I would do this for suspect 2, 3, 4, crime scene, and victim so that we would have all of the correct blood in the correct trays. Then what we go through and do is add the anti-stuff. And the anti-stuff is going to be what makes the clumps happen. So the anti-A serum is going to make anything that is blood type A clump. So I'm going to put a few drops into the A area. Then I'm going to use the anti-serum B. So anti-serum B is going to be a little yellowish color. And again, if you look close at my tray where it says B, I am then going to place a few drops into the B area. Last, I am going to do the RH factor. Okay, so I have my RH right here, and it's kind of a green color. And I'm going to put a few drops into the RH little area. So now I've got all of my A, B, and RH tests run. Now, you could leave these sit for a little while and they would develop, but what I would want to do is I would want to make it so that Okay, so as I said, we are trying to figure out blood types. If you guys, I cut off my video by accident, so when you're looking at it, make sure that you look at it and see that you put the A. If you were doing this in lab, you put the A in the A, you put the B in the B area, and you put the green, the RH in the RH. So now that I've done that, and I use toothpicks to stir it around, which, again, once I use my toothpicks out of my clean cup, which is what I have here, I've used them all, then I'm going to put them in the trash cup like we talk about in lab, that we always have a trash cup. So again, that's to avoid cross-contamination. And again, if you were really doing this in a lab, you would have to be changing your gloves frequently and making sure that you had sterile equipment, because you would not want this to get cross-contaminated. It would ruin your evidence, and then it wouldn't make a solid case. In this particular case, suspect 1, we can see the flecks in A, in B, if I move it a little bit, and RH. So you guys should be able to see A. You should be able to see, if I focus in on it a little bit, the B flecks kind of moving around, and then the RH. So because I have flecks in A and in B and in RH, this blood type is AB positive. So what I've done is I've actually gone through and done the whole lab, filled everything in, and now you guys are going to have to decide on the blood types. So I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to tell you what they look like, and then you guys are going to have to fill it out on your forms. So, looking at this lab setup, we have clumping in A, we have clumping in B, and we have clumping in RH. This is the exact same as the one we just ran. This is suspect 1. So suspect 1 has clumping in A, clumping in B, clumping in RH, so this is AB positive. Suspect 2, if we look, suspect 2 has no clumping in the A, clumping in the B, and then no clumping in the RH. So that is suspect 2. Suspect 3 has lots of clumping in the A, no clumping in the B, and then lots of clumping in the RH. Suspect 4, if we look at their tray, there is no clumping in A, no clumping in B, and no clumping in RH. And remember, when nothing is on the outside, remember what that looks like from the previous video. Now down here for our crime scene, we have clumping in the A and clumping in the RH. So this would have been like the sample that we collected from the crime scene. So this is the forensic sample we collected from the crime scene in our little lab. This would be the victim. And remember, we want to know what our victim's blood type is because we want to know whose blood is what in our crime scene. So if you look at the victim, it has clumping in B, no clumping in A, and no clumping in RH. Okay, now, the reason blood typing cannot be used for individual stuff is because this only gives us blood types A, B, AB positive, all that stuff. It doesn't give us an individual. If I wanted to get the information for an individual, I can't just use the blood type. I have to go ahead and go through and do the DNA testing on the white blood cells. So I showed you guys how the captures work. I talked to you guys about how we can collect different ways we can collect blood. We talked about presumptive tests, and I showed you guys all that stuff in our PowerPoint. This is going to be where this is all going to kind of kick in. And again, we can only use this to add or eliminate suspects. We would still need a DNA test on the white blood cells in order to verify 100%. The other thing I want to make sure that you guys remember, especially about this, is that this is simulated blood, okay? Anything I use in our lab is simulated blood because I don't want anybody to get sick. Everything that would be a regular blood product would give bloodborne pathogens a go, and so that would be a little bit more dangerous for us to use in the lab. So we always use the simulated stuff so that you guys can see what it looks like, but we don't actually have to touch any blood. So those of you that are squeamish about blood, know that none of the blood that we use in any of these labs is going to be anything that would be harmful to anyone else, okay? The only reason I'm wearing gloves is that I don't like to get stains all over my hands, and some of this stuff can stain, and I'm just not into that. So again, this is how we would set it up. Teachers that are doing this is how I set it up in my classroom. I have them set it up like this with the stuff, and then we run the tests and keeping it organized. This is how I have them set it up. I just use, instead of paper, they put paper towels down and they write on the paper towels. And again, this, just to remind you, this is what we're talking about when we talk about blood factors, okay? We're talking about A positive, B positive, AB positive, O positive, A negative, B negative, AB negative, and O negative. Remember, O negative has nothing on the outside. So once you've got this result, you should be able to go ahead and finish up the lab. I've given you the lab in Google Docs. It is an assignment in your classroom, and you should be able to fill that out and answer all the questions for me, okay? I know I didn't see a lot of you guys in this particular video. Hey there, I'm still here. Hope everything's going well in quarantine. Hope you guys are doing good. And if you need anything, let me know, okay? Have a great day, and I will get back with you with our next lab assignment.